Okay, hi, and welcome to week 3. This is lesson 1, where we're going to talk a little bit about understanding the mind-body immune connection, just continue to build on these skills. So here's a little bit of what we're going to be talking about today, some really interesting stuff to dive into. So first and foremost, what is psychoneuroimmunology besides being a really long mouthful of a word? To keep it short, we're going to call it PNI, but basically it is the study of how our thoughts, emotions, and nervous system directly affect the immune system, right? And there's been some really fascinating research come out about this. It shows us that mental health is not separate from physical health, right? They are very deeply intertwined. And for women with autoimmune conditions, this science really helps us understand why trauma and chronic stress and your emotional health play such a big role in symptom patterns. So many autoimmune clients have heard that it's all in your head, right? Everything looks fine, your labs look fine, nothing else we can do. And that message is so dismissive and harmful because the truth is, what's in your mind is deeply connected to your body. It's not imagined, it's physiological. So when you are emotionally distressed, your immune system responds. It's doing what it should, right? So learning how to support your mental and emotional state becomes a direct way to influence inflammation and flares. Okay, so let's talk about the stress pathway and the HPA axis. So one of the most studied pathways in PNI is the HPA axis, and that is the communication loop between your brain, more specifically the hypothalamus, but your brain, the pituitary gland, and your adrenal glands. So when stress is high, your HPA axis releases cortisol and adrenaline. And over time, chronic activation leads to cortisol resistance, increased inflammation, and immune dysregulation, which obviously is a very common pattern in autoimmune illness. So let's talk a little more about what happens when you are under stress for too long. So cortisol, like we were mentioning, is your main stress hormone, and it's meant to help regulate inflammation. But when it stays elevated over time, it can actually make things much worse by throwing your immune system way out of whack. Adrenaline and noradrenaline, those are kind of the get up and go chemicals. And they also affect how your immune cells behave. So they can ramp up or they can dampen your inflammatory response depending on what your body thinks it needs to survive. So the problem is when this stress response becomes chronic, it starts to shift your body into a constant state of alert, right? You're kind of always in survival mode. And that leads to much more inflammation, much more flare ups, and of course, more fatigue and exhaustion. So, understanding what's happening here biologically, right, gives us a powerful reason to prioritize calming the nervous system and kind of breaking that chaotic loop. So, your beliefs and emotions can either amplify or dampen your immune response. When you are stuck in fear, shame, self criticism, the body releases more inflammatory chemicals like cytokines. Um, but when we practice self compassion or feel emotionally supported, we see a shift towards immune balance, which in turn makes cortisol levels lower, improves vagus nerve functioning, and leads to reduced reactivity in our nervous system. So, a study published in Brain Behavior and Immunity showed that people who suppressed emotions had significantly higher inflammatory markers. Another study from Harvard found that practicing brief daily mindfulness decreased IL 6 cytokines and also elevated the ability to regulate your nervous system. So this science tells us that regulating our inner world, what's going on between our ears, right, has a huge impact on what's happening in the rest of our body and our biology. I've seen this a lot in clinic of, people that come in and have suppressed their emotions for years and years and years, especially obviously with women, right? Because it's really easy for us to fall into that caregiving role and putting other people first. And that's one thing that I found to be such a pattern of people with women with autoimmune is they were kind of chronic people pleasers. So a lot of this is, understanding how that suppression of your wants, your needs, your emotions is really making you ill. So here are some additional studies regarding PIN and autoimmune disease. There was a 2018 study that showed high stress impacted rheumatoid arthritis flares by 35%. There's also been randomized trials that found stress-induced markers being 20% higher in patients with lupus. So all of this to say, like, stress does a number on your body, and same with repressed emotions and not being able to speak up and advocate for yourself. It causes a lot of disruption in your body. Clients often tell me I feel worse when I'm stressed. My flares follow emotional triggers, or I push myself too hard and then I crash. These are not coincidences. They reflect real psychoneuroimmune feedback loops. So when we learn to recognize these patterns, we can begin changing them from the inside out. So try this daily mind-body reset. We've talked a little bit about diaphragmatic breathing, which forces the parasympathetic, your rest and digest part of that system, to kick in. So, let's just take a moment and kind of practice together and review. If you want to place your hand on your belly or on your heart, we've practiced that before, but just pause and take in 3 slow breaths, just kind of at your own pace. You don't have to count it out. Just this is about noticing what's happening in your body and just kind of how you are feeling. So we'll do this together, just 3 slow, slow breaths. One more. My dog's doing some deep breathing with us down there as well. Okay, so take a moment, right? Maybe you still have your eyes closed. What are you feeling emotionally right now? Ask yourself, what do you need in this moment? This practice of just breathing, helping activate the parasympathetic nervous system, checking in with what you're feeling emotionally, and then asking yourself what you need, right? It is helping to build awareness and to regulate that HPA axis, right? That communication loop. And it's creating an internal sense of safety, right? Just feeling safe in our body. It's really important. So, when you can continue to repeat this over time, it really does start to lower that baseline of stress and immune reactivity. So I know it might feel like we're doing a lot of breathing exercises, but it's because it's one of the most simple and effective ways of reconnecting to your body, checking in with yourself, and activating the parasympathetic nervous system. Okay, sometimes what flares our body isn't the situation, it's the meaning that we give it. So, cognitive reframing really helps shift how we interpret stress. So, instead of that inner dialogue that says, I can't handle this, right? We try kind of reframing that of, this is hard, but I'm doing my best, right? I'm gonna get through this. And these small shifts really help to reduce our emotional load and signal to the nervous system, I'm okay. I'm not under threat. I'm going to be able to get through this. So take a moment to just reflect, or even better, if you can write it down in journal. When have you noticed your emotional state affecting your physical health? When you think about maybe an example of that, what internal patterns, right, thoughts or stressors tend to increase your symptoms? So thinking about this and connecting to that awareness creates the foundation for healing because obviously you can't change what you don't acknowledge. So being able to recognize maybe how your inner dialogue is um, connecting with stressful situations, right? And you're feeling overwhelmed and maybe you're being really critical or telling yourself, I can't do this, this is too hard, things will never change, right? That negative mindset is really further impacting this inflammation and dysregulation in your body. So, just kind of take a moment, think about how you handle stressful environments and how you can start to maybe be a little kinder to yourself or just reframe what's happening around you in a way that feels a little bit more encouraging. So psychoneuroimmunology, PNI, really bridges the gap between the mind and body. So it's hugely important. It helps to explain why mental and emotional care is essential in our autoimmune healing. In the coming weeks, you will learn to continue practices that calm the nervous system and support immune balance. But for now, just practice your daily resets and the things we've already gone over and begin tuning into the internal stories that your body is telling you. So I hope you've learned a lot from this. This is a subject I really enjoy. I think PNI is so interesting, and if you want to go down a rabbit hole and Google some of the research behind it, it's truly fascinating. But anyway, don't forget to check in with our worksheet for this lesson, and I'll look forward to seeing you in lesson 2.